I'm Shahar Azani, and in the news, the Farhud, the pogrom against Jews in Baghdad. During the Feast of Shavuot, this week, 79 years ago, on June 1st and 2nd of 1941, mobs stormed with cruel and unthinkable violence against the Jewish community of Baghdad in Iraq, maiming, killing, raping, looting. It was a turning point in the history of the Jews in Iraq. Farhud is an Arabic term best translated as pogrom or violent dispossession. In the 1940s, about 135,000 Jews lived in Iraq, nearly 3% of the total population. It's important to note that Jewish communities had existed there since the 6th century BCE, hundreds of years before Muslim communities established presence in Iraq. It's also important to remember that Jews existed throughout the Middle East and came into ethnic cleansing only in the course of the 20th century. On the afternoon of June 1st, 1941, riots broke out, targeting the Jews of Baghdad. These riots lasted for 2 days, ending on June 2nd of 1941. Iraqi soldiers and policemen incited and led some of the riots. Unlike in previous incidents, rioters focused on killing. Many civilians in Baghdad, including Bedouins from the city's outskirts, joined the rioters, taking part in the violence and helping themselves to a share in the loot. During the 2 days, rioters murdered between at least 179 Jews, injuring thousands of others, raping an undetermined number of women. They also looted over 1,500 stores and homes. Rioting ended at midday on Monday, June 2nd, 1941, when Iraqi troops entered Baghdad, killing some hundreds of the mob in the streets to re-establish order in the city. The consequences of the pogrom stunned the Jewish community. Generally unarmed and lacking military training and self-defense skills, Baghdad Jews felt vulnerable. They felt helpless. Many decided to leave Iraq. By 1951, only 10 years after the Farhud, most of the Iraqi Jewish community, about 125,000 out of the 135,000, had already left the country, many of whom emigrated to the State of Israel. To discuss this shocking and memorable piece of Jewish history, I'm proud to have with us on JBS, all the way from Los Angeles, Mr. Joe Samuels, an Iraqi Jewish survivor of the Farhud massacre in Baghdad. Joe was born in a poor part of the Jewish quarter in the old city of Baghdad. He has recently wrote his memoirs, Beyond the Rivers of Babylon, about his escape from Iraq and Aliyah to Israel, starting a new life from scratch. Mr. Samuels is also a very active spokesperson for Mizrahi Jews expelled from Arab lands during the 20th century. He speaks to an array of audiences about this very important topic. He's a retired real estate developer who currently lives in LA with his wife Ruby, and together they have 3 beautiful children and 5 grandchildren. Joe, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, and I appreciate your interview.
I wanted to ask you first, I hope you're healthy, you're safe at home. How are you feeling at this point in time with everything that's happening around us?
To describe my health, I said I am A-okay. You know, despite the age, because I am now 89, thank God I enjoy the...
Thank God, thank God.
See, read, and walk, and I'm very proud to be a part of the community to contribute my story.
And how are you? How have you been coping with the corona pandemic? Has it influenced you or anybody around you?
It's like anybody else. We are in a voluntarily house arrest, you know, at home doing, but I don't miss a day without walking with my wife around the neighborhood. And if any, we take care, we are independent and we take care, we go shopping. Of course, we dress like bank robbers with masks, and we go there and we do our necessary and keep communication with my family. And thank God to the technology with the Zoom, Every Friday night, I connect with the whole family, and we do a kiddush, and we blessing, and we talk, and we share the beauty of our family.
That is beautiful. Thank you. And it's incredible to speak to you and your energy and vitality. Thank God. So it's the topic we're dealing with is one that relates to events that happened this week, 79 years ago in Baghdad, Iraq. Maybe you can start by sharing a little bit with our viewers about your childhood as a Jewish kid in Iraq.
To describe my childhood, I had a happy childhood. We lived in Taht al-Takia, in the Hart al-Yahud, that's the Jewish quarter, and we had structured family, and I was one of 8 children. I had six brothers and 1 sister, and I was the 7th of the 8. My father was a religious person, and Shabbat was a prominent getting together. The whole family, after he came back from the synagogue, we made the kiddush, and we kissed his hand. My personal life was, we were friendly with the kids. We had our family, the cousins and the family, and everything around within walking distance. My world it's only 2 to 3 square miles. The shops, the school, the synagogue, the family, cousin, all within the same distance. And I would describe, I didn't have any incident that I grew up believing that Baghdad was my home and Iraq was my country.
Surrounded by so many Jews around you, you lived at that time a full Jewish life.
Absolutely. The biggest event, all the celebration, the festival, the Chagim, was an important part of our lives. We got together with the cousins. My father took me to the synagogue, and of course I went to the Jewish school. But my mother tongue is Arabic. The school we taught in Arabic, but they taught us Hebrew, not to speak, but rather just to read and pray.
I would say that to some of our viewers and others, it will remind what's happening in American Jewish day schools today.
Yep. This is how I grew up.
And might I ask you, Joe, what did your parents do for a living? What was their profession?
My father, if you go a little back, his father died when he was 13. So he grew up with 2 brothers, and to support his mother, my grandmother, which we called her Yumma. And he grew up, started working to support her. Then when the family grew up, I have an older brother who is 20 years older than I am. My father and my oldest brother started a business in textiles. When we were in Baghdad, they just started with a small store, but slowly graduated, and the business grew up, and our financial situation later improved, and we moved. We moved from Hart al-Yahud a year before the Farhud. We went to an area, a little upscale near the Tigris River, that's called Babi Shargi.
And how was your your relationship with the other non-Jews, the Iraqi, the Arabs in the city? Did you have friendly relations? Did you maintain any kind of relationship with them? Did you play with them as a child?
We did not have like friends together to play as in the same school, because the school was a Jewish school. But we had in our cul-de-sac, there was a Muslim there, Yahya, who had a dry cleaning place in his house, and he was very friendly. And I didn't have any growing as a child, I did not have any contact with Muslim directly as friends. We played on the street. The street was unpaved, twisted, and in the winter it was muddy there. But later on, when I grew up, things changed. One year I spent at the American School for Boys, and that's a missionary school when I was in high school. And we had friend Muslims, Armenians, Christians, and we had a very good relationship with them.
So all in all, you're describing a happy childhood, a normal childhood, going to a Jewish school, parents who are working up their way in the social and economic ladder, moving to a better place. You lived a life of happiness and serenity.
And I was hoping that this will continue to be that way.
But then what happened, Joe? What do you remember of the Farhud? How old were you? And describe the sentiments.
Okay, I was 10 years old. And as I mentioned, that we moved to Bab Shargi. And
that's the upscale neighborhood?
Yeah, better upscale than the Hart al-Yahud in Taht al-Takia, where I was born and grew up. So it was much better. So at the beginning of April, I think April 1, when the coup of Rashid Ali al-Gailani cooperated with Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who was very well known, an anti-Semite. And I described in my book about how he was with Hitler, and aided by, of course, the German ambassador Franz Grobe. They had a coup in Baghdad.
And that they basically ousted the Brits at that time. While the British were having a very difficult time during the Second World War, they took advantage of it to take over the city.
Precisely. But the British was not, running the government. They indirectly were involved in controlling the government. So when the coup took place, the child king at the time, the son of Ghazi, and his uncle, the regent, and all the government fled, and then it began a new era of the propaganda of anti-Jewish. The anti-Jewish sentiment began in 1933 after the death of King Faisal I, who was so friendly to the Jews, who appointed his finance minister, Hassasur Hasqail, as Jewish. He was a wise man, and he appreciated the Jewish community involvement and building of Iraq. But after his death, the situation turned 180 degrees.
And things deteriorated. But when the Farhud erupted, you didn't expect it to happen.
No. As I was mentioning, that slowly the pro-Nazi propaganda was coming, but when the coup came in, it was on the open. The newspapers, Radio Baghdad, and the arrest, it began openly. Every day they blamed the Jews, did something wrong, and as a young kids, the structure of the family is not to get the kids knowing something sad, to protect the mentality of the grown-ups, to protect the child, shouldn't tell them. But I felt it. I felt the tension. I felt the sadness. And April 12th, I remember our Passover, which a festival that I loved every year to celebrate, was my favorite, which was gloomy and sad. I knew the tension. Something terrible is going to happen. So it continued, and then what happened? And on May 31st, when the British brought fresh troops from Habbaniya, they had an army camp there, which is, I think it's about 70, 80 miles from Baghdad, and they brought fresh troops to Baghdad, but they stayed outside Baghdad. The coup leaders fled, and then the chaos began.
So what happened on June 1st? Describe it to us.
Okay. What happened June 1st, I have my older brother, Eliyahu. He was 6 years older. He was very daredevil. So he took his bicycle on June 1st to go to his friend. We heard some gunshot. We were worried, and what's happening? Radio Baghdad is saying, the coup leaders have fled. So he came back with tears because he saw how the blood and the minibus were stopped because they picked up the Jews from the minibus, they slaughtered them, they robbed them first, they raped them, the women, and he came back so traumatized, telling us what he saw.
So Eliyahu is 16, and he's on his bicycle running around the city, and on June 1st, he starts seeing those rioters massacring Jews on the buses.
When he came, we all cried what he was saying to us. We all felt so shocked.
Did you believe him?
I believe that we saw it, of course, with his own eyes, and of course we're hearing from the neighbors, because at that time we didn't have a telephone.
Right.
So the news comes from one neighbor to another, what's going on, and we hear what's going on. So that's the only source at the beginning when we started. So we at home, and I as a kid, I remember what we did. We got all the heavy furniture, put it behind our front door, just in case somebody will come and breaking our door. And I carried water bucket to the roof. We had primus to heat the water to boil, just in case of the crowd will come, that we can pour water on them and chase them.
So you're there, things have become gloomy before, and it's Shavuot, and your brother Eliyahu comes home, tells you about the massacre that's taking place, and immediately as a family, you are afraid the rioters are going to come over, so you start barricading the house and getting ready for goodness knows what. Then
Yes.
What happens?
So, as I said, we put I took buckets of water on the roof and boiled water just in case. Then I was looking and I see a guy carrying all kinds of clothes, carrying with him. And I locked eyes and I looked, I said, oh my God, as if he's telling me, I will be back for you. I saw him going, but that was on, what I saw actually from the Farhud physically.
So at that point, you barricade the house and you stay indoor. You
Yes.
don't know much of what's happening.
No.
And did they end up coming to your home?
No, we didn't see mobs coming to our house. They didn't come. They were at the synagogue, about a synagogue area called, which may be about, I don't know, a couple of miles or a mile than they.
Why did the rioters focus on Harat el-Yahud? Were they focused?
That's right. We had the Harat el-Yahud, and they went to further down to our area, but that was the 2nd of June when the British entered, or the Iraqi army entered Baghdad.
So you were not harmed, you or your immediate family, you were not harmed in the course of the Farhud?
Not us. But then my two uncle, Moshe and Meir, who were living in the still Jewish quarter, they were totally, their house were ransacked. They robbed everything, and they were lucky they jumped from one roof to another, because the Harat el-Yahud is houses attached from 3 sides, the 2 sides and the back. So they jumped from one roof to another, and they were not physically hurt. I think one of them broke a leg or something, but they're not killed or not. But their house was totally ransacked.
What was once the rioting stopped on June 2nd? How did you feel? What was the feeling among the community? What did your parents feel? Their business, their life, their community?
Well, my thought of thinking that Baghdad was my home and Iraq was my country was totally shattered. I said, this is not my home, and I want to get out. I was at night.
You were only 10. Were you able to understand what was happening?
I was 10, and I understood what's going on. Even my older brother didn't exactly tell me what's going on. But at that time, I want to show that I'm strong, so I didn't cry in front of them. But I went to sleep crying to put myself asleep at night. Sorry, I remember this. It's a terrible feeling as a kid to face with this thing.
I'm with you, Joe, and all of our viewers, and I just want to thank you for sharing this memory and this moment with us, because it's very important for people to understand and to remember the Jewish community in Baghdad, in Iraq in general, was one of the most glorious of the Jewish communities in the diaspora, from olden times till only recently. And many people today negate the existence of those communities because they disappeared. And what the world needs to understand is that these communities didn't just disappear off the face of the earth. Things happen just like what you're describing now, Joe.
Yeah, and you know, the community, we never been treated equal. I realize, you know, we are at best we are treated as stranger. At worst, we were treated as traitors.
Right.
You know.
So what's next, Joe? Then you wake up with your family. Was there any thought about for all of you to just get up and leave, or were you thinking we had right?
We had nowhere to go. Where to leave? Where to go? We have no. You know, we couldn't hide. Which country? There's no country to take us. Right. You know, we believed that situation with the community, it's just a blip and it will change. And, but we were trapped. Where can we go? At that time, we didn't think of Israel. The only thing about Israel and Zionism was on Passover, where you say, L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim.
Right.
You know, that's all what we knew about. You know, we were Iraqis. We believed this is our home. You know, we really believe in our future. But after this, when I said, I have no future here and I'm going to get out. So the only way I thought that I can get out is by studying hard, getting finish high school and leave.
And then you're going where? When do you actually leave Iraq?
Okay, I graduated in 48, in June of 48. And that's after the War of Independence, the Iraq War of Independence. And at that time, when Iraq failed to eliminate Israel with the Arab country, they turned against the Jewish community.
Right.
So summary arrest, torture, the fear that I go after that to the street, I don't know. So my father said, take a lot of money in your pocket, just in case somebody stop your policeman, slip him 5 dinars, you know,
right. Which
like his month's salary. They used to make, just don't argue, just slip him the money. Okay. So, but slowly we thought things will go back to normal.
Right.
And things went back to so-called normal. But in 48, it's all changed. You know?
And then you decided you're going to go to Israel.
No, I applied for a visa to America. Mm-hmm. I got 3 acceptance. I was dreaming to be a nuclear physicist. Right. And hoped maybe one day I could shake hands with Einstein. You know, I was excellent in high school. I wasn't good in geography and history, but I was deep into chemistry and physics. Actually, I had the key to the lab in my high school to make practices. Wow. I was involved so much with that. But then my brother Bribe got me a passport. I got the visa to America, but they wouldn't give me what is called khuruj. And that is exit visa.
Right.
Many people don't understand what, you know, you have a visa to go to another country.
Right.
It will allow you to leave.
Right.
They wanted I should deposit 3,000 pounds, 3,000 dinars as a guarantor that I should be back.
Right.
Who can put 3,000 dinar as a guarantee? And seeing some of my friends were arrested, and I was fearing, I said, the hell with it, I'm leaving to Israel. I'm getting out, whether any way. So then it began my exit, my journey, which I details it in my book so clearly.
Here I can
was
see
a-
I can see the book behind you, Beyond the Rivers of Babylon.
That's correct.
Wow.
And it was a horrific journey.
I'm sure our viewers would love to read your book and read all about the details of the journey. But what happens at that point with your parents? Are they staying behind?
Yes, I left with my younger brother, Nouri, who was 3 years younger. I was 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we took the train from Baghdad to Basra. And thank God from there, we took the riverboat covered in a hay. And it's a long story, but we crossed to the Iran. And from Iran, I came to Israel.
Oh, that's amazing. And then you even served in the IDF.
Yes, I was in the refugee camp. I stood in line with my tin plate for a free meal. You know, I was homeless, penniless refugee. I stayed in a tent anchored to the sand with straw mattresses, and I was first of all, I had the best feeling in my life was a sense of freedom, like a bird out of a cage. I felt I could walk, I could smell, you know, but at the same time, I felt angry. I felt humiliated. I standing in line for a food that I didn't know what, it didn't taste in my life. They gave us slimy herring, you know, raw fish.
Right.
They gave us margarina that I never knew about it. Yeah. Black bread.
Classic kitchen, classic culinary IDF at the time. Let me, just because we're running short of time, I just want to recommend to all of our viewers that they read your book, because it's really a real-life Hollywood movie and a very big part of our memory. I also want to ask you for a final word from you, Joe. Yes, what is your message for our viewers, for future generations, for people who are listening to you now? What is your message for life? What do you want to tell them?
I tell them this. I take an example of my life. The first thing I came in and I said, I'm throwing the key of my house emotionally from head to the sea. I'm not going to go back. I had faced two questions. Sit down and cry. Who did this to me and what happened to me? Or where do I go from here? I chose the latter. And that began my journey in life. I faced the difficulty, the disappointment, the broken dreams. Like anybody else, but I wanted to be to in the future. I wanted to live the present and look at the future. So I lived a life that I remember the past, but I will never live in the past, because I realized living in the past is a voluntary enslavement of the present and darken the hope of the future.
Joe, I could not agree with you more. And even though we would have loved to hear so much more of your story, I think it's an incredible part of our history. I want to thank you on behalf of JBS for sharing your life story with us. It means a lot just to be able to carry those Jewish pieces of history into the future. And that story is absolutely astounding. And to our viewers, I'll say, remember the glorious Jewish community of Iraq. Remember the many other Jewish communities throughout the Middle East who'd been ethnically cleansed and disappeared. Their memory must stay alive. And it is a most beautiful part of our Jewish people's history. We must never forget, but at the same time, we must never live in the past, but rather live in the future. And if only more people share that view like Joe's, then I believe our world would look so much more different. I'd like to thank you all for watching. And to all I say, stay safe and stay healthy. I'd like to thank our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's managing director, Dara Golub, technical manager, Michael Paley, transmission manager, John McDevitt, and to our producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. For JBS, I'm Shahar Azani. Until next time, see you soon and lehitraot.